Welcome to Love in the Morning, and I have a very special guest, Morgan Berry. We found out we have quite a bit in common besides loss, besides grief. Morgan is a safety professional, and that was part of my career back when I was actually working in the workforce. And he has created something very unique and very special using something that you used in your career. And it's to support men, and you have this amazing support system called Men's Haven, and
Mhm.
it is really just to be there for men through the hardest seasons of their lives, using tools and guidance that kind of create a system that works well with them and their brains. And you'll be able to explain that so much more. You have experienced significant loss in your life.
Yes.
Um, you lost your mother and your grandmother in the same weekend. You've
Mhm.
lost a job that you had for over 16 years, an end to a marriage after 20 years, and then the death of your son. Um, and, you know, I don't know how you feel. No one knows how you feel, even if we've experienced similar losses. And I just want to thank you for being here to be able to share your perspective, your wisdom, your experience, some of your tools, and kind of what grief has brought to your life and maybe what it's taken away, the lessons that you've learned. But thank you so much for being here
Well, thank you
and
for having me.
sharing your story. And really, this is your story. Uh, and my job is just to ask you the questions that line up with that story. But can we first, before we get into your story, can you talk a little bit about Men's Haven and like how you got to this? Like what brought you to creating something like this?
Well, it goes back many years, probably when my wife and I first separated. I was looking for support for myself and for men. And 8, 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of things out there. And as I learned, there were groups out there, but they're not easily accessible. Um, I dabbled in a few things here and there. I started one company called Empowerment, but it wasn't the right time. I let my own fears shut it down. I wasn't, I didn't feel confident in myself. I didn't feel. I started meeting other people. I started doing the comparison of, this person's here. Um, and then probably last year, I started kind of thinking about it again. uh, Wanted something that wasn't like saying, "Hey, this is like going to be an empowerment thing." Wasn't going to be, wanted to create something more for a safe place for guys to be, right? And that's where Men's Haven came from, because I figured, you know what, Men's Haven kind of sounds a little manly, but yet kind of gives that impression that like it could be a very safe place to be. Um, with my wife Desiree being a counselor, I have a little bit of insight and trying to, if I have some problems or whatever, I can bring them to her.
Mhm.
Um, but really, like what I've created isn't counseling. It's not therapy. It is just, you know, dudes hanging out with dudes, holding each other accountable, and that kind of stuff.
I would say that very similar. I'm not a therapist. I am a coach
Mhm.
like you, an educator. I, I'm a lot, but what we do, I think, is very therapeutic in nature. It's not
Mhm.
easy work. I
Yep.
never, and I mean, having a community. I love that you have a community for men to come together and just be really honest. And that's the thing. You can't. There is no healing that will happen with who you pretend to be. You have to actually be yourself authentically, and that's peeling back a lot of layers,
Oh, yes.
a lot of things that, you know, you should be a certain way. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Mhm.
Men get a lot of that. It's not just
Oh,
women.
we do. Um, like even to this day, like, there's with, again, living with a therapist, going through and doing the work myself, I still have the times where I gotta be that strong person. And being that strong person isn't easy. Like, people look at you or look at me and they see me doing the steps, doing the process, taking care of the things that need to be taken care of. Um, but deep down, just like any other guy, we just want to be understood and, at the end of the day, held, right?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, and that really came apparent when my son passed away, just because, um, it's a big shock, trying to figure things out. And of course, with having the safety training and background, you want answers, so go and talk with the police and trying to get understanding and stuff like that and trying to relay it back to the family. Um, but yeah, by the time, that was all said and done, I think I think it was like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks before I felt I was allowed to feel, right?
Right, because you're in management mode. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna backtrack, and I you have, like I said, you've experienced significant
Mhm.
emotional loss in your life. You lost your mother and your grandmother on the same weekend,
Yes.
and I can't. Again, I can only imagine. Um,
Yeah.
but looking back now, what do you like? What did you actually do with the grief at that time? And how long ago was this?
That was back in 2013,
Yeah.
right? So I was married, I still had kids. I hadn't really started working on myself. Get the phone call from my grandmother, which, we were expecting. She was like in her 90s and had Alzheimer's. And, so getting that phone call was still sad, but it was um, it's kind of expected,
Right.
you know. I don't like to say it, but sometimes at certain ages we know things are, especially when the person suffer, right?
Yes.
Um, but my mom was very sick. She'd been sick for quite a while. She was diabetic. She had a very bad heart.
Mm,
They actually went in one time to do open heart surgery on her to do a bypass, and they couldn't do it because her body started doing their own bypasses. She ended up getting cancer. Just about anything you can think of, she probably started getting it, and her body started shutting down as well. And the stress of hearing about her mother and not being able to go, I was pretty sure is what finally happened or what finally caused her to pass. Broken heart syndrome at the end of the day. How I handled all that, really bad. My first time really experiencing grief, and it wasn't just, you know, one person, it was two, and you didn't have time to process the first one, let alone trying to process the second one. Um, I was numb for quite some time. Like I really feel, yeah, I can still just feel that numbness to this day.
right.
Um, but yeah, so like I really, I didn't know the tools. There was some grief workshops.
Right.
I went to a couple of them or one a couple of times, and I kind of, you know, not feeling the same way others do. And there was a lot of women in there. I
Mhm.
didn't feel like it was right for me, you know.
Can I ask you a question? I just want to jump
Yeah.
in here. What kind of You know how we're taught. We can watch people and we can learn that way, and people can tell us, be a certain way. But when you were growing up, how did your parents deal with grief or loss?
My dad was very stoic.
Right.
He was born in the 50s, grew up in the
Mm.
60s, 70s. His dad was very stoic in that way too. Um, so he never really showed emotion. The only emotion he showed was anger.
Yes.
And as we all know, anger is
Yep.
the consequences or the outcomes of other emotions.
Yep. Yes.
Um, but I do remember when I was younger, one time he'd actually gone to a funeral for a coworker, and it was because I think it was their 1 year old or 2 year old child had died. And, I remember at night, he was in bed and he was crying because of the size of the coffin. And
Oh,
he was a pallbearer for that funeral as well. And I think that was the only time that I never saw it, but I heard it.
right.
So, I mean,
How did
in a
it make
way,
you? When you think back, how did that little boy feel when he heard his father crying?
um,
Did it scare you?
yeah, it was kind of scary because you never
No.
heard dad cry, right?
Yeah.
And then I think about it, now and how it taught me or showed me how to handle those things. It's a private moment,
Yes, you were taught
right?
grieve alone,
Yeah,
grieve alone, be strong.
yeah, you
So
know,
so when you think like it's like, oh, I handled, my grief badly. It's like, no, you handled your grief the way you were taught by people who loved you,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
that's we're breaking that cycle.
yeah,
But yeah, I was taught the same thing. If you're gonna cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And I
yeah,
used to think I'm crying about something. I don't need another thing. But yeah, don't cry. Don't feel bad.
yeah.
You know?
You get 5 minutes and that's it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Wild.
so yeah, that was a lot of what I had. And then of course, like going into these other groups and them talking about emotions and you're growing up stoic
Yeah.
and your dad doesn't show emotions. You sit there and you go, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. I'm not gonna
You
make you
know,
cry.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that must have been so hard because
yeah.
and I liken it to my mother died suddenly in 2006. And I I got a phone call. I was on we were it was a work trip and we were all in a coach, like in a big
Mhm.
bus traveling across like from actually we're going to Saskatoon. And my sister called me and I heard her say, Mom died. And I let a scream, like my mother wasn't sick. We thought my dad was gonna be the one. Anyway, I let out this scream. I don't even like I think I heard it, but it was this, and I kept saying the words, "Oh my God," over and over again, and I couldn't sit still. And then
Yeah,
I was like, I have to get off the bus. I have to get on a plane. I have to get to my dad. And I didn't cry. I went right into management mode and I did not grieve the loss of my mother for almost 16 years. I didn't know how to feel. I
yeah.
was an
Oh,
emotional person who didn't know how to feel.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, yes, when we had I don't remember if I cried at um my grandmother's funeral. I think I was still in that.
Mhm.
My wife at the time was actually back here in Edmonton with my dad, helping him plan the funeral for my mom and, doing all of that stuff, while I'm in Ontario, with my mom and of course, or my grandmother. And of course, her brothers and sisters are there as well. And I mean, they're grieving
Mhm.
their mom and then, now they got to grieve their sister and, um, all of that. But, I remember actually being at the funeral, sitting in an area with my middle daughter, and I started crying. and she had never seen me cry or show emotion. She thought there was something seriously wrong. And she asked me like if I was okay. Um, and when I look back at that, I mean, I think that was a bad thing because I never, I did the same thing my dad did. I didn't show emotions in front of my kids, right?
Again, we circle it back to what we know and what we've
Yeah,
taught. But she got to sit in a moment where her father actually showed emotion,
yeah,
even though it was unsettling, probably, and maybe a little bit
yeah,
scary for her. She saw that there was you had pain and you expressed
yeah,
it, and in a
yeah,
weird kind of wonderful way, it gives our children the permission, that, oh, if dad
yeah.
cried, I could cry.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I see that I see that holding emotion back a lot in my oldest daughter. Um, she's very, management, stoic. Not I'm not gonna say stoic, but very I am not allowed to do all this because everybody else has to do it
Gotta take
first.
care of everybody else. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I told her when her brother died, my son died, that wasn't it's not right. You need time to for yourself as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and because of that, y- I think the 2 years prior to me losing my job, um, because I never took care of the grief, I just okay, this is done, put it over here,
Yep.
right? And I looked back at how things were doing, like even within my own marriage, like just things were, I checked out. At the end of the day, I checked out, right?
Yeah, you're
Uh,
protecting yourself.
and then yeah, like that goes into me losing my job. I'd worked for the company for 16 years, and that was even, going back to how you're raised. My dad was get on with a good company, get a good wage, work hard, get that pension, and that
Yep.
company will take care of you until the day you die.
Yep.
Well, guess what? Doesn't work that way anymore,
Nope.
right?
No.
Um, and then even then, just because unresolved grief at that time, and then you're losing your job, I lost my identity,
Yes.
needed to figure out who I was, and, checking out even more, right?
Yeah. There's these compounding losses,
Yeah.
and it can be, well, it's cumulative, right? And it's
Mhm.
cumulatively negative in your
Yeah.
body, and you don't realize how much of a physical toll that can take on us, emotionally
Yeah.
and physically. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I continue, I should probably let you know one thing. I'm also an only child.
Okay. Oh,
So, I don't have, other than aunts and uncles that, live in northern Alberta or out Ontario, I don't have, and other than my kids, I mean, I don't have any other family
right.
support, right? So I'm still trying to, I didn't have a sibling that I can sit down and talk with. Yes, I had a cousin that I was close with, but he lived 5 hours away. He was a little bit younger. He was trying to start his own family. So, as guys,
Yeah.
don't burden others with your problems, right?
Yep.
But yeah, and then my dad passed away, and that one was a total shock. Um, we know he'd been sick. But he kept telling us, "Oh, it's just a flu, just a flu, just a flu, cold." He went in to see the doctor, and they said, "Go home. We're calling you an ambulance. We're booking you into the hospital." Um, my one cousin was living with him at the time, and my dad looked at him and says, don't tell Morgan, because I'll be out of the hospital tomorrow. So it's okay. I'll tell him when I get home tomorrow what's going on. And it was not knowing. Even the hospital wanted to call and tell me, like, we should call him, right? He didn't realize how serious it was. Like, he went into the heart section of the Royal Alec here in Edmonton, and he's like, "Yeah, it's okay. I'll be out tomorrow." well, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting a phone call from the hospital thinking some drunk guy gave the wrong phone number and they're calling me. So I ignored it. Um, I think they called me twice. And then, yeah, I think at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, I had to go do a quick run at the place I was working at and got the call, answered it, and they told me that he was on life support at that time. So it's like, well, what the hell's going on here, right? So
Hmm.
yeah. And then I remember going to the hospital, giving them the paperwork. Still, like this was only a few years after my mom and grandmother passed away, so I'm still trying to, process that. And now I got to process my mom, my grandmother, the job loss. Now my dad, something's going on with my dad. I'm still trying to find a better job than what I was working at.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, I think it was 2 days later, I got a phone where I went in to see him, and because we were supposed to get a stent put in him,
Right.
and I'm like, well, what's going on here? Like, why was it? What was going on? And they explained also too that they had what they call the widow's maker,
Yes.
which is that main artery,
Mhm.
and I was trying to figure out like, well, why can't we find a doctor to do this? And they said, well, the biggest problem is that he went septic at the same time because he never took care of himself properly. He didn't see a dentist, things like that. Um, which to me, afterwards was a big eye opener of like, well, I need to take care of myself,
Yes.
right?
Oh my gosh.
Um, yeah. So 2 days or a day after that, they called me up and they said there's nothing they can do. Come into the hospital, say your goodbyes. If you have family coming in from out of town, we'll keep them on life support and go from there. Yeah,
Wow. And you think about that, and it's so gosh, after my husband died, that was something I was like, when something doesn't feel right in your body, if you're a man, if you're anyone, but if you're
yeah,
a man, it's not a sign of weakness to go in and get checked.
no,
And the interesting thing is my husband was a stoic guy too, heart charger, all those things. But he did go in and they were looking at his heart. They weren't looking at anything else. So he had stomach cancer that got to the point where there was no turning back. But he still, like, he didn't take care of himself. And
yeah,
like, you're important too.
hmm
Men are very important.
yeah. Well, and guys like to, and I do it to this day myself, right? Like we want to take care of everybody else,
Mhm.
right? We put ourselves last, and I remember like with my previous marriage, like things we struggled a lot of the time. 3 kids.
Yeah.
I was the only one working, so I remember a time I went like 4 months without a haircut, just because they needed stuff too, right? So yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah,
sacrifice.
yeah,
And I mean, how, like, when you think about that and you think about that young man, you and everything
mhm,
that you went through and I always think like how you coped and how you managed until you got to the place where you couldn't cope anymore. Like you look at that man and he really he got you here.
yeah. He
And
did. Oh,
you
I don't
don't know
know.
what you don't he
Yeah,
you don't know what you don't know, but once you know better, you can do
yeah,
better. And I think like that's what I look at like for you, and we'll get into it more, but what
yeah,
you have done is in your experience, it's like, how can I open this up for other people so they don't have to go through the years that I went through?
mhm,
Or other men who haven't actually made it, like they didn't
yeah,
make it to this point. And I think it's such a beautiful testimony to your heart and your passion for actually educating and being there of support and having this group
Mhm.
for men. It, as soon as I saw, I've met your lovely wife, but as soon as I saw kind of what you were doing, I was like, I got to share this because most of my um, community are widows, but grief is all encompassing. We as a,
100%.
if you are above, I mean, when you're born, give yourself a little time, you're going to experience loss and you're going to
Mhm.
grieve, and we all grieve differently. And I just think that it's men have been taught for so long to just be strong, to
Yeah.
not to grieve alone, to stuff it down, to make sure everyone else is okay. And that's where, like I said, your health, your mental health, your physical health, all of that takes a toll. Your marriages, um, jobs, like you cannot sustain stuffing down the pain forever. No. And
No.
so you, like when you look at this, so you lost your father, you had to make probably a very difficult decision. Like, did you
Uh,
have to make the decision, or the hospital said, like, where it was time life
Basically,
support?
they said there was nothing they could do. So it was, I called family. Unfortunately, not everybody was able to. Well, most people weren't able to make it to the next day. My uncle, his baby brother, said he was going to be there. Like he didn't care what it was going to take. Um, and he got there later that night, and it was after he showed up and he got to say his goodbyes. Excuse me,
Yeah.
we turned off the life support on him.
That would have that that act um is when you I yeah, I can only imagine um to say, yeah, you've got to make that decision because there's nothing
Yeah.
else they can do. And it's, yeah, you can, how did that make you feel in the moment? Like what was going through your mind?
Um, I think at the moment like again, I was in shock. Like I from the time I found out he was in the hospital, he was on life support, to the time, we said, okay, you can take him off life support. Um, like it just didn't feel real. I was in shock
Yeah.
throughout the whole thing, right? Um, and again, like I said, I was the only child. And of course, he had one brother who lived here in Alberta, and the other one lived in Ontario. And he made me the executor
Mhm.
and the beneficiary of everything, right? So now all of a sudden, I have this responsibility
Yes.
that I got to take care of his his stuff, right? So, so yeah, then it's like, okay, great. What's my first step? Fortunately, my uncle, he stayed for 3 or 4 days. He helped me get a few things put into place, you know, going and tracking down the will, um, where I learned don't put your will in a safety deposit box. Right? Like I learned a lot of things from that,
Yes.
but at the other hand too, you also start learning some dirty secrets that you don't necessarily knew about until afterwards, right? So, trying to deal with all of that, still trying to process the other losses that I had. Um, and that year my dad passed away was the same year my marriage broke down. And it's because when I look back at it, like, yes, we had a lot of problems. Do I think we could have worked through them? Probably. But because I wasn't taking care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, anything like that, I snapped, actually. I had like 3 weeks where I was getting 4 hours a night of sleep. And, I snapped, you know, was not good conversations that one day had with my wife at the time. And then that was, yeah, that night that happened. It was in October. She looked at me and she said, "Go stay at your dad's place." I mean, there's no furniture there, so I couldn't stay there, but and that was, you know, of course, trying to figure out what I can do to fix it. That's what guys do. We got to fix it.
I have to fix this. Yes.
Yeah.
It's
And
not fixable.
yeah. And then, going through, therapy, counseling, like her and I, we went into marriage counseling. Um, I think pretty much at that point in time, we both kind of decided, you know, enough was enough. Like this, we knew it wasn't going to work. Um, so then, yeah, we basically separated about 10 months after my dad passed away. So then now I'm trying to navigate that.
Well, yeah, and you just think like it's just this. It's just
Yeah,
like this. You would have been a powder keg. Like you would have been just like ready to, and like you said, you blew up at
yeah,
like you snapped. But it's
yeah,
like that's exactly what it is. It's like that steam kettle where you stick a cork in it and it's like boiling over. What's going to happen? It's going to blow.
yeah,
Oh man, been there, done
yeah.
that.
But I mean that to me was at a point where, again, like I was looking for those resources and I
Yeah.
couldn't find them, right? But I started looking at, it's when I started going, okay, well, what's got to change? Something inside of me has to change.
Yeah, the
And
inside.
that's probably where I started doing a lot of my work. Like I was still going to see a therapist at the time, reading a lot of self-help books, reading books that were when I was reading through it, going, "Gee, I think that's me." But I wanted to understand addictions because my family has got a lot of addiction problems, and so I wanted to understand it. And I was being accused of being a dry drunk at the time, which when there is no real such thing as a dry drunk, but
No, it's
you
like,
grow up with an alcoholic, you pick up behaviors, right?
yes. Yeah.
So yeah, and realizing like after a while that I gotta focus on me and what's right for myself, and started getting out of that nice guy point of view and going, okay, like I gotta do this for me, and no one's gonna come and rescue me. I have to do these myself, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
then we come to, so you've done some work, you're
Mhm.
unpacking your own self, you're unpacking all
Yeah.
that pain. I liken it to, for me, it was like 2020, and it had nothing to do with COVID, but it was like
Yeah.
that's when everything kind of hit a wall. I call it my breakdown to my breakthrough. Um, where you can't avoid, you actually either have to do something or you're gonna
Mhm.
drown. Um,
Yeah.
so you were doing the work, and this was just recently that Caleb
Yeah.
died
Yeah. About 6 months ago.
six
Yeah.
months ago. So this is very,
Yeah.
very fresh, very,
Yeah.
and could you, would you tell me a little bit about like who Caleb was?
Was.
Yeah, I would love if you feel comfortable just sharing
Um,
the young man.
yeah, Caleb was a very, very interesting young man. He really loved his grandfather, and he picked up a lot of the stoic traits that a young man does from the men in his family, and he picked that up from me. Even though after the separation, he actually lived with me. Afterwards, he just went and visited his mom, and so like he saw me working on myself, and very smart, like very, very smart. Um, yeah, he was just a very like your typical young man. He met a girl in high school, they moved out together to try to start a family, and you know, not listening to not listening to parental advice, like, hey, dad's been there, like, your oldest sister's a year older than what your mom and I's wedding anniversary used to be. So, you know, I've been in this situation, and yeah, like he didn't, he was going to be his own man
Yes.
at that time, right? So it's like, all right, well, I'm here if you want to talk or whatever. I think he did a few things that, when I was his age, I should have done probably a little bit more. We had some disagreements a few months before his passing, so I hadn't really been speaking to him or my daughters at all very much because they all just kind of took some time to themselves. Um,
Yes.
and yeah, so I mean, at the time when he passed, I was already kind of grieving that loss of a relationship.
Mhm.
And I'd already, oddly enough, I actually started following David Kessler
Okay.
and getting his emails because I wanted to understand more about what I was feeling. And I think, you know, getting the news of him passing, which yeah, was not a good day, you know. Um, and I think that kind of started helping me through that process because I kind of already started starting to understand the grief a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, it started bringing to light things with my past loss as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I went in, and so I kind of understood. I was able to go to family member, the rest of the family, and start saying like, hey, like, like, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel this way, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to ask questions,
Natural.
understand, trying to, help them and myself to understand like everybody grieves differently, that
Yes.
there is no right way to grieve.
Nope. There's no
Um,
roadmap.
yeah, just like life, we don't have a roadmap.
No, no, we don't. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so like when he passed, it was tough. It was for me, it was the obviously the loss of my son, the loss of the future.
Hopes, dreams, and expectations.
Yeah, that was I think the biggest one for me was the loss of the future that I wasn't going to be able to have with him anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
Um,
And I mean, you talk about this loss really cracked you open.
yeah,
It changed the way that it changed everything.
it did change. It changed a lot. It
And
made
how
me
could it
realize
not?
how fragile life there is.
Mhm.
Um, that also showed me like how I've been living in that unknown of the fear, those shadows of, you know, don't put yourself out there, don't do this, don't do that. Um, it really made me realize like nothing's certain anymore,
No, tomorrow
right?
isn't guaranteed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it made me start like I'm still to this day still, well, obviously still looking at myself, what I'm doing, what I need to do, understanding that, when I'm making my posts and talking about it, that I don't have all the answers. And where I thought before I needed to have all the answers to, and I don't,
No, none
right?
of us do. And it's like, yes,
Yeah,
we would be, we are technically experts in our area, our field, but every day is a learning experience for
yeah,
me. And, I think if we're open to learning and being wrong and learning from our mistakes, and
mhm,
that is the only way to go forward.
yeah,
But so when you say Um, his death cracked you open.
Yeah.
What does that mean to like, because you say, I mean, and the work came from the inside out, like it's not the
Yeah.
outside in. So it's
Yeah.
working on like all those cumulative losses, which you had been working on, but in this instance, because you said like at the beginning, there was an expectation. Your grandmother was a certain age. She was 90. She had
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. It's like it still is sad. The shock of your mother, then the shock of your father, your marriage, your job, all of these
Yeah.
things. And you're trying to work through that. And then Caleb died.
Passes away. Yeah. Um,
And it's early days. You're 6 months
oh,
into this.
yeah.
A
Yeah. Yeah.
father who and everything about about this death, and all deaths are difficult. I don't care how long someone's lived or whatever. There's pain, but we're supposed to outlive our children.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all your hopes, your dreams and expectations for this. So you're 6 months into this.
Yeah.
And what has this it's cracked you open. So what's happening?
I think the big thing with the cracking me open is that it started to force me more to actually look at myself, look at the things that are going on in my life. Um, trying to make sure that I have a as best as I can relationship with my children. I've never had a good relationship with them. But I leave it open for them
Mhm.
to communicate. And we do get together periodically. I mean, they're all adults. They've got their own life. Um, but mostly for me, it's like, what's going to be my legacy,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
I don't like when you're 21, you don't think of a legacy,
Right.
you know,
No, no.
when you're,
When when
you're
you're
50, you don't think of it.
no, you think about it, and
Yeah.
this is where people like us, which is so important in the conversation, you think about it when it's hitting you in the face. And it's like I always
Mhm.
say to people, having a plan, an end of life plan, having your ducks in a row and having your will, like you said, don't put it in a safety deposit box. Where are you going to put it? You put it somewhere where it's accessible. Um,
Yeah.
and the person who's going to take care of that knows where everything is. But it's like all this stuff. Like, don't wait, because I'll say to people, like, it is one of the most loving, thoughtful gifts you can give the people you're leaving behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
People
and,
don't
and
want
I,
to talk about that.
yeah. And that's something I learned too, because at 21, who thinks about having a will?
Nope. Oh gosh.
Who,
And you don't want, like, when it's like sitting down and going, well, who takes my kids? I don't like
yeah.
making those kind of decisions. You think of the worst case scenarios and it almost freezes you. But I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, the likelihood of that happening is probably very minimal, but still,
Yeah.
got to do it. And I can say I didn't have a will until I was in my middle 40s. We didn't have wills.
Same here. We're working on
So
our will
listen, you
right
guys
now.
out there, get your wills in
Yeah.
order. You might think you don't have something, but what do you want? What do you
Yeah.
want to have happen?
But I
Yeah.
mean, and there's other things I look at with my son when passing, right? Like he's a young man, he's trying to raise a family, you know, trying to live in the best area that he thinks going to be good for him and his family. Like he lived for him to go from his house to work was about an hour's drive every day. So, an hour there, hour back, so but to him that was, a good community he was in. So he's trying to make those decisions. Did he make some poor decisions? Yeah. Did he, listen to me when I said, hey, your partner's upset because A, B, C, and D, at least do A, right? To show her that you're paying attention, and then, finding out he didn't at the end, right? And that's something too, like when you're young, you don't think you need benefits or life insurance and stuff like that, when that could have solved a lot of problems down the road too, right?
You again,
Yeah.
you can't put an old head on a new body. And I mean, I remember being young and not thinking like what, you don't know how I feel, Mom. You don't know what I need. And yeah, most of the time, a lot of things that came at us were what were was wisdom, but there's
Mhm.
also a lot of old way of thinking. And I mean, our kids are going to make mistakes, and the very devastating part is that you don't have that time with him to be
No.
able to sit with him and go, okay, let's work through this. I'm here for you.
Yeah. 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 And that's part of the things that, like I said, cracked me open too, right? And, you know, um, and then with his daughter, right? And seeing the pain and anguish that his partner was going through. So a lot of when that all happened, a lot of, again, what guys do, they jump into fix,
Yeah.
so I was jumping in, and we'd drive out to Redwater where she lived, and we'd pick up the granddaughter, and we'd help her pack, and you know but also to letting her try to make her own decisions, and she's young as well, right?
Yeah.
um did she make some right decisions off the bat? No. Did some of the stuff that she thought was going to work out didn't work out? Yeah, she's in a better place now, which is good. She is a lot closer than, than a 45-minute drive every day, all the time. So, um, but also that was something I had to stop and realize as well, right? Like, I'm not, she's an adult. She needs to figure things out. I'm not her father.
Mhm.
Um, she needs to make her own decisions
Yeah,
in
you
life
can you
as
could
well,
be there to
right?
support and
Yeah.
listen and yeah, just be there regardless of if she makes a mistake. And
Yeah.
that in is like a safe place to land. You know that
Mhm.
regardless of what happens, you've always got someone there. And it sounds like
Mhm.
that's a really safe place for her.
Yeah. 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 She's living with my oldest daughter and her husband right now, which I think is a good move
Yeah.
for her. Helps give stability for her and her daughter. A little bit extra help with her daughter that she needs.
Mm.
So yeah, it's some ways it's been good. Some ways, there's always the good and the bad, right?
Yes. And
So.
there's so much when you think about this, like the ripple effect of loss, the ripple
Mhm.
effect of death, of the loss of a job, loss of a marriage. There's
Yeah.
all these layers. Loss isn't just one thing.
No.
And in the middle of that, there's you trying to figure out who am I because you can't go back to
No.
the man you were before you got the phone call.
No.
Um, you can never not be like you can't go back to that person. I always say that to people. You're not going to go back to him or her.
No.
They're a part of you, but you can't unknow what you know. And it's like how you choose to go forward. And I think the most healthy way is being really honest. And that can be really hard for people, especially with all the preconceived notions and the myths and misconceptions that we've been
Mhm.
taught. And so you went through all of this, and in the midst of, before Caleb died, you were already working on this Men's Haven, though. How long has Men's Haven been around?
Um, yeah, so I probably have been working on it for just over a year, to be honest, because it was something else I was trying and
Yeah,
dabbling, and
yeah.
nothing was coming of it. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna I'm just going to put it on the back burner. Enough is enough, right? Just stick with my job. This is who I am. I'm
Mhm.
not going to be anything more than that. And it's been, I think it was when my wife came up to me and said, like, look, I want to do this workshop for men, and I want you to speak on grief. And, and I kind of stopped and I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like I do, again, I didn't believe in myself that I actually had a story worth sharing. Again, you compare yourself to other people's, and the other people's, you hear their stories and it's just this huge tragic, could be a Shakespearean play or something like that, right? And well, that's not me.
You minimize your own experience. And here's something on do a little grief coaching here. And I know you've probably gone through this, but it's like we can't compare our losses. Our
Yeah,
losses are directly related to our relationship with the
yeah,
person, place, or thing that we've lost. And the intensity of that relationship is what kind of like, big love. And you think a father and a son. And yes, they're
mhm,
tumultuous, like I'm a mother of three daughters. So, I mean, there's a lot there, but it's like, and the loss of a marriage, whatever. There is this. I I could have gone through the same lost a child, and we would sit beside each other, and I would tell my story, you would tell your story, and I may be thinking in my head, my stories doesn't matter. Like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. It's like, no, you know what? Your experience and your story's so valid. Like, and I'm so glad that your wife asked you to speak
yeah,
because your story and especially if you're comfortable sharing the story
mhm,
and bold enough because it's not the norm for a man to get up and talk about grief unless you're David Kessler or unless you're, like it's like,
yeah.
oh, what's his, like, what's his name? He's the gray haired guy on CNN. Oh my gosh, I think
Oh, Andrew.
Anderson
Yeah,
Cooper. Anderson
yeah,
Cooper.
Anderson
Like
Cooper. Yeah,
he made grief cool. He made grief cool. I want to be on his podcast, but it's
yeah,
like he, just like us,
yeah.
was taught a certain way of being and carrying
Mhm,
so much pain. And you, with your wonderful wife, have opened up something that is so needed. And I'm so glad that even though you maybe didn't believe in yourself, maybe you compared yourself, all of those things, you created something and you know it's valuable and you
mhm,
know your story matters. And whether it's a room full of men or a room full of women or a room full of women and men or a high school group of
mhm.
kids, it's worth listening to. It's worth being told.
Thanks. Yeah,
Oh, 100%. So you, out of all of this,
yeah,
created this community for men.
yeah. Working on creating it. We're still in the the early stages. I mean, when I had it before, I'd had already started a private Facebook group.
Mhm.
Um, there's been a few more men that have joined it recently. Um, so I'm kind of starting off there, you know, putting some content out there, some thoughts,
Yes.
um, trying to do that. Really revamped my website compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, and you know what? It's all a process. But
Yeah.
and so let's just before we bring it to a
Mhm.
close, but we said at the very beginning, we're both I was a safety professional, you're a safety professional. There's horrible things that can happen in
Mhm.
industrial sites in jobs. And, I remember going through the regulations and it's like, being told, well, somebody's blood is what we wrote this in.
Yeah.
There isn't common sense out there. So we worked with operations guys and workers and helped create hazard assessments, processes, systems. They help build. And so what you've done is you've taken that premise, and I don't want to butcher it, but you've taken that concept to bring it to helping men in the hardest times of their lives use systems that actually seem logical to them,
Mhm.
right? Like it works, and how they can work through. You're
Yeah.
giving tools that work.
Yeah.
You can't do the work for them, but you can say, hey, here's some things, and I'll walk
Well,
with you.
yeah. Well, with guys, we're very, we need that plan put in front of us. We need to have that understanding. And like I said earlier, um, been thinking about that for some time, and I really started looking at it, like even just like over this past year with the passing of my son and going, okay, so what are the hazards of me not doing A, B, C, and D?
Yeah.
What are the hazards that are holding me back? Like self-doubt, unresolved grief, anger, health wise, what do I have health wise, right? I'm overweight and I got pre-diabetes, I had a heart family of heart histories, things like that. And then then you kind of going like, well, okay, so what are the risks? I don't do this stuff. And then so on and so forth, right down to your safe work practices. Like, what are the tools that I'm going to put in place? Like, how am I going to take care of this? Okay, so I need a doctor, so now I got to go look for a doctor. And it's nothing new that's out there, but it's, again, like you said, trying to relate something that men and women can actually relate, right?
Utilize, and you know what's interesting though? It's not new, but it's
No.
not utilized. Like it's not
Yeah.
talked about. When we don't talk about something, we don't know about it. We don't understand it. What we know is that don't feel bad. Like, don't feel bad, get over it. So, what we do as human beings is we learn how to cope, and there's good ways of coping, and then well, I mean, anything that we do to excess is probably not the best, but I mean, because
Yeah.
people with stress or pain, I'm going to
Mhm.
exercise. Well, when you're exercising, copious amounts in a day and your body's breaking down, or you're eating too much, or you're drinking too much because you're trying to numb the pain,
Yeah.
uh, that's where it's like, okay, it got me here, but I can't do this forever.
No.
Shopping, spending money on things that you get that dopamine hit, and it's like, okay, it's distracted me. It hasn't stopped the pain. And what you want to do is you want to say, hey, guys, let's look at this. We got to actually sit with the pain. We
Yeah.
have to feel it in order to move through it.
Yeah.
And how do you do it? You do it by being in a community where you feel safe.
Yeah.
And I think that is so incredible. I love that you're
Thanks.
building something really beautiful and meaningful. And I mean, I come from a family of soldiers. I was in the reserves too, but men who served in war zones, and a lot of PTSD.
Mhm.
A lot of their friends did not make it, and the military has gotten a lot better, but still, I mean, these guys need support. Firefighters, first responders, guys that are working out in the oil patch. I've talked to men who have, like, you think, oh, they haven't dealt with, things that my husband dealt with. They've dealt with things that are completely different and horrific, things that you should never have to see, never have to go through. And
100%.
and yeah, like working with people like that and going, I've got a system that you're going to understand.
Mhm.
It isn't going to be so like, ooh, I gotta, like, where, like, I gotta feel like this guy's gonna
Yeah.
make me feel. And it's like, you're gonna feel, but it's gonna be in this maybe logical approach to feeling. I think maybe,
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it could very well, like I said, it's still fairly new in the development stage, you know. But again, like I look at these things for myself, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, and I know for a fact, like we don't, nobody, like most guys don't look at it that way. They just know something's not right. Just going to push it off to the side, but needing to evaluate and go, right? Like figuring, yeah, like getting down to figuring out what those tools are, like
Yeah.
going to see a grief counselor, going to see a therapist, going to your doctor, right? I'm not I'm not the person that's going to give you what you need to do, but I want to try to help you find what you need to do
Yeah,
to get
for you.
to that stage,
Yeah,
right?
like a resource. So,
Yeah.
what do you wish someone had said to you earlier in your grief journey? And what would you say to the man listening right now who feels heavy, stuck, or alone?
Um, with my grief journey, I really think that someone would have told me um, that it's a natural, number one, it's a natural part of life. Um, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. Um, you know, and that 20 years from today, you could be sitting in a chair watching a TV show and start crying for no apparent reason. Um, and that's okay too,
Yep.
you know. And that if what I'd like to tell guys is that if you don't deal with this, with the grief, with the pain, um, they can cause other pains later on in life, right? You know, it can relationships, health,
Mhm.
jobs, you know. Like I
Yeah.
said, when I look at the my job loss, you know, even though it was 2 years after my mom and grandmother passed away, when I look back at it now, I wasn't dealing with things well,
Well, and you
you
were
know.
dealing with them the way you knew how to, but
Yeah,
yeah, like you, hindsight's always 2020, and you just want to give these men like, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. It's
yeah,
what's happened to you, and I got some tools here to help you work through some of the hardest stuff you'll ever go through.
yeah.
And I thank you. That is so incredibly profound. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, you're well,
Your
thank you for
story.
having me.
Thank you for talking about your mother, your grandmother, your
Mhm.
father, Caleb, your life, your family, the hard things in life. And, you know, I, I love that you are so honest and vulnerable, not vulnerable in the sense where you are unashamed because there's a lot of stigma, right? With our grief, and we
Mhm.
can be embarrassed by it, or we feel shame like, well, I'm not over it yet. Like I had people say to me when year two hit, like, aren't shouldn't you be like over this by now? um I was married to this man for 42 years of my life, 44 years, like it was the longest relationship I had ever had with a person, and
Yeah.
I'm like, when I don't know how to answer. No, I I don't think I can. Like I can live. I can survive. I will be like this. And much like you, after he died, I searched for resources for a woman my age, because I was 61. My kids were
Mhm.
grown. We had 7 grandchildren. We had a really full, busy life. And then all of a sudden, the big guy, then my big dog is right here, Wendell, named after Wendell Clark, John's favorite hockey player, go Leafs.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, it was just him and I realized I had never been alone. I
Mhm.
I left home. I moved in with my sister, and then I moved in with John. And I mean, he'd gone away, but I was a mom. I had kids, like, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but it's The quiet was deafening. So I was searching for anything. Please tell me what's happening, how this is going to work. Like, I don't know how to do this. So I wrote the book that I needed.
Yeah.
And from that, I created a program.
Mhm.
I used to teach the grief recovery method, which is a great resource. And then I'm like, I think I have something that I feel like I can utilize more. I created that. I created a bunch of programs. I'm on my second book. And look at us, like grief can, it does take the wind out of you. It can take you out at the knees. Like anguish is, well, if there was a sound bite for anguish, I know what it is, and it is in my book. I'm not going to share it right now, but it's like, anyway, it does undo us, and we can choose. We do have choices. We can choose to stay stuck, or we can
Yeah.
choose to be honest and work, just like you said, work on those things of how can I move forward, not on,
Mm.
because you're going to carry them with you. You carry your dad, you carry your mom, you carry your grandmother, you carry Caleb. They are all interwoven. Their DNA is in your brain.
Yeah.
There's no avoiding them. You don't have to go, oh, I should probably be, you don't have to draw upon, like, I have to think about them. It's very easy. Um, so I think that what we do is very helpful. It's needed, and you are creating that safe space for men to be vulnerable, to work through some really hard shit, um, knowing that the person beside them isn't going to say, "Just get over it, man." You're going to have somebody sit beside you going, "Wow, that's
Yeah.
hard."
And you know that, people like that that say just get over it, they actually eh, they either haven't experienced it or they just happen to be one of those people that once all the boxes are checked, it's done. They're a
Right.
very rare person, but um yeah, they sometimes anger me because you don't know what I'm going through,
Yeah, no,
what
exactly. We
I'm feeling.
don't. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like if we lost, we both lost our parents. The
Yeah.
relationship to our parents is what. When I lost my father and I did not have a great relationship.
Yeah.
I didn't see him hardly at all. Like it wasn't this huge void in my life. When my
Mhm.
children lost their father, it's been devastating watching his daughters
Mhm.
and your relationship with your mother and your father. Like you still carry that, and it doesn't make me a bad person, and but we can't compare. And
No.
I think if anyone, what would something you would want people to take from this today? What is the most important thing that you want people to take from this?
I guess the one thing is that uh, you know, I'm probably going to quote it wrong, but David Kessler said like grief um is shows how much you actually love somebody,
Yeah.
right? I look at it as it's, you know, that is time, it's something I carry. It's something that reminds me of them. And in a way it honors the people I've lost as well.
Oh my goodness, they
Yeah.
deserve our grief. And um I one of my expressions is that grief is our last expression of love and probably our most honest expression of love for the people we have lost through death.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a powerful, powerful, and very beautiful and honoring emotion to carry. And for many of us, we run so fast away from it, and you can't outrun your grief. You cannot. It
It'll
will get
catch up
you.
to you one
Yep.
one way or the other. Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna, because you've inspired me, I'm gonna read you something
Okay.
from my book. It's called Love Is. And I honestly, when John died, I mean, I used to write all the time, but I never really, it was a way of processing, and that's kind of what helped me. So this is a poem that I wrote about love. Love is. Love is in the corner of our souls. Love is in a smile. Love is in tears. Love is laughing when no noise comes out. Love is fighting and making up. Love is a whisper. Love is hard. Love is easy. Love is real. Love is keeping the door open for your grown children. Love is being there when your grandchildren are born. Love is loud family dinners. Love is holding on when it seems pointless. Love is believing in forever. Love is in each breath. Love is slow dancing in the kitchen. Love is holding hands when you are mad. Love is kissing anywhere. Love is saying I love you without words. Love is knowing when to be quiet. Love is painful. Love is saying goodbye when all you want to do is hold on tight and never
Mhm.
let go. Love is letting someone be selfish. Love is not a burden. Love is loving someone till their last breath. Love is endless. Love is you. And I always get choked up in the love is saying goodbye when all you want to do is hold on tight and never let go. And I can only imagine you with your father in that moment. Love is endless.
Mhm.
And I think people say this, and I will end it. I could talk to you forever. Um, love is, you know, grief is love with nowhere to go. And I'm like, no, I don't agree with that. Grief is love and it overflows. Like you think of all the love that you've been given in your life from these people that you've loved and lost, and it pours out of us. And I see this beautiful creation that you are working so hard and diligently on. And I believe there's something really great in this. I
Mhm.
believe, Morgan, that there's going to be much more to this than even you know, but it is an offering of love from those you have loved and you still love and have lost. Your grief and your love is overflowing and it does have somewhere to go. It's touching other people's lives.
Mm.
That's
Thank
what
you.
whether or not anybody else does, that's what I believe.
Well, yeah, that's something I need to do is start sharing some of this stuff a little bit more with people and stuff like that. But
Well, you know
yeah.
what? Here's the thing on your social media, just little snippets, just talk. And I'm going to see if I can. Well, I'll talk about that later. But anyway, we'll say goodbye to y'all. And thank you so
Mm.
much for being here. And tune in next time. And if you have any questions, how can they get a hold of you, Morgan? Your
Um,
website?
Probably the best way would be my either through my website or just even sending me an email. But I do have a contact page on my website.
And what's your
Uh,
website called?
it's menshaven.ca.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we'll share that and I'll have it in the notes. But thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.